Okay, we are now starting our live transmission, and it's really a pleasure to have you all here today with us. It's the second day of the Health Data Forum Global Hybrid Summit. We had a very intensive day yesterday. We are started with the Digital Health Portugal roundtables. Then we had the Blue Stream opening session. We had global shapers and start flip presentations, and then the closing plenary last day. And finally, for the guest speakers and summit members in Port, we had the summit dinner. And now we're ready for the second day, starting now with the green stream of this summit. Green stream is focused on healthcare research and innovation. And the opening plenary that we are going to start now in a few minutes will be featuring a panel with dear guest speakers already in the Zoom mosaic, starting by the chair of the session, Dr. Rui Santos, president of INFARMED, and a renowned healthcare leader, not just in Portugal, but in the EU for his efforts in constructing a European health space, not necessarily European health data space, but a European health space, and actively involved in the EU presidency last semester. Thank you so much, Dr. Rui Santos, for taking your busy schedule to be here with us and sharing this session. Also with us, and in order of appearance, are Dr. Susan Gound, president of ICHOM, and no need to introduce ICHOM because I think it's a renowned consortium and institute that is advancing health and healthcare globally. Thank you so much, Suzanne, for being here with us again. You last year also featured as a keynote speaker. It's a pleasure to have you here. And Dr. Kostas Repanas, it's really a pleasure to have you here as European Commission again present in this summit. It's an honor for us, and especially from the RTD, the DG RTD, the research and innovation is the focus of our conversations here. And I'm looking forward to your presentation. And we are waiting now for Dr. Peter Arlett. Urska, any news on that?
Sorry, not at the moment, but the email has been sent, so I think we can proceed, and if necessary, we will have to skip this part. Sorry.
Okay, we'll do that then. So without further ado, Dr. Rui Santos, the floor is yours for the session that I hope that you can complete in these 50 minutes you have allocated for a brief series of presentations, and then I will intervene in the roundtable that will start, and you will have also as chair the last word in this session, the concluding remarks. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Paul. Thank you for your introduction. Good morning. I would like also to congratulate you on this initiative on this Health Data Forum Global Hybrid Summit. It's a pleasure for me to be here. And also to share some views and some perspectives in this meeting. I'm very pleased also to be with the colleagues that are on the session, and I hope also that Peter, with whom we are working very closely in this specific area of health data, that he will be able to join the session for the discussion. It looks like he's probably arriving.
No, you will be arriving, I'm sure, unless obviously some unfortunate thing might happen, because we just checked yesterday and everything I think it'll be over soon.
So I would like to share some views and some perspective from my side as head of an authority who is dealing with medicines, mostly with medicines and medical devices, and covering the entire cycle. Perhaps I could have my slides. I don't know if they are, I don't know if Uske will put them. I was not sure.
Slides?
No, I cannot have the slides. No. No, if not, that's okay.
Please start. We will start showing them momentarily.
Okay, maybe we wait one more minute. But perhaps there will be coming in. So what I have in my first slide, but I will. Okay, so they are arriving. So we are okay. Maybe presentation mode. Yes. So. All right, we can move to the next one. So here just to show the areas of action of INFARMED. So as I was mentioning, we are covering the entire cycle of both human medicines and medical devices. So we intervene from the very start when research is being conducted, and we are intervening in authorizing clinical trials and through marketing authorization. But we also do HTA assessment, and then we, let's say, intervene on the different areas when it's related to pricing and reimbursement, but also on monitoring the market, both from a more technical perspective, but also from the perspective of the health system. So data is something, maybe I have the next one, is something that we use in supporting all our activities. Can I have the next one? Or is it me? No. Yes, here just to show how INFARMED activities can be supported by data, and so here we refer to the different areas where the data is very important in order to help us in taking decisions. And I mentioned here the horizon scanning, which is since the very beginning what is being developed, what is being still in the research phase, and then gradually across the board until we are looking at the outcome of the utilization of the technologies, both medicines or medical devices, not only to support decisions like reimbursement, but also to allow us to do reassessment of the conditions that have been under the decision. The next slide, I will just highlight some areas where I see how important is the use of the data that we have available. So as I was already mentioning, it's very important to improve the use of medicines and health outcomes, but also in relation to the efficiency of the use of public resources. This, I think, is something very important, that we are able to do the right choices, to do the right decisions in order to really reorientate the resources that we have available, and that are limited, so that we have to choose how best to use them. Of course, as I said, for all decision making, but also helping us in predicting trends, and this is more and more important in our context of the health systems. Just the next slide, please. Also to give you the different sources that we use here at INFARMED when it comes to the data. So we have an integrated system which allows us from getting data from the NHS. We have a public health service, so that allows us to have information on what medicines, what medical devices, what quantities. So we have information that we draw from hospitals, Also, we receive this information from the market, and this covers both the hospital and the outpatient sector. And also we collect information that comes from the patients, for example, these claims data, and also some data that are received through specific registries that we have implemented. And for this, I can give some examples in the next slides. So we have a number of registries that we have implemented to monitor the outcomes of a number of diseases. This is both related to the need to receive epidemiological information, but also to monitor financial agreements that may be linked to the decisions taken in relation to the access to specific products. And some of the examples that I can mention here is the earlier one we had on hepatitis C already a few years ago, but more recently we have established one for the spinal muscular atrophy, which is now very important given the type of drugs that we have. This is what I would call the one-shot drugs. So that's very important that we have a monitoring of the outcome. But also we have another example in the area of the lysosomal diseases. So these are just some examples. In addition to those specific registries that we are still developing, and we are looking on ways to integrate them. But we have also, and this is in the next slide, we have also a national registry on oncology, which exists since a long time, but was more focused on diagnostics and on the clinical aspects. And now we are also trying to incorporate more information on effectiveness data, so that we can use this system that is implemented all across the country to monitor progressively some medicines. There I give example of some of the ones that we are already monitoring, and you see also the case of the CAR T cells, where we have applicable contracts that we should pay by results. So it's very important that we are able to collect in a proper way the information that we can then use. Still, to give you other examples, and I look at the next slide, please. On the importance of the data in our concrete activities. So this is more the examples I've shown were more on the side of the utilization of medicines or medical devices. In this case, we're more medicines, but we have also used the data during the pandemic process, during this phase, in order to monitor the availability of medicines, and also to forecast the needs. So we have been looking to monitoring process across these last 2 years in order to ensure that there would be availability of the medicines. And this was mainly based, so having the list of essential medicines, and then we were collecting essentially 3 types of data from the epidemiological side, so how the pandemics was evolving. Then we had the information from the hospital, so we were monitoring the available volumes in the hospitals, and also from the side of the companies. So we tried to combine these 3 levels of information in order to intervene if necessary. I think this is proven to be very successful, and we managed to have a smooth management of the availability of medicines during medicines and medical devices during the pandemic. So of course, once we had this initial phase where we all had difficulties with the medical devices, but this is something that we are now looking now to introduce as a more structural system into our operations. Just to conclude, so these were some examples examples I want to share with you. Just to conclude, also, of course, and this I'm sure that Peter will and Kostas will tell us about what is happening at EU level. But just to highlight that there are a number of EU initiatives where we will need to, let's say, bring the importance of health data and to regulate, to create an appropriate framework for them. This is clearly in these initiatives. I can mention the European Pharmaceutical Strategy, but of course also the EMA, the European Medicines Agency, and the heads of agencies joint strategy for 2025, where this is one of the main chapters of activity. And then to conclude, just to also to highlight, and Paulo mentioned it, that the next slide, please, that during our presidency, we had an adoption of a set of conclusions in the council that were focused on the patient, but related to these three levels of intervention, so accessibility, availability, and affordability. And one important element that we have introduced in these conclusions is the need to set the appropriate framework for the use of health data, because as we all know, we need also to have appropriate rules that we know that when we are using the data, we are sure that they can be relevant for its utilization and and the decision we want, we may need to take based on them. And this has all been shown during the pandemics. To conclude now, just to highlight some perspectives, and of course, I think the need for stronger and earlier coordination of all the participants in the system is very important. Also, the more integration between regulatory and HTA and even more is very important. Here at INFARMED, we have this experience, and I think this is more and more relevant. I think the pandemic has also highlighted, both in relation to the rolling reviews and also in the subsequent phases, that the importance of the need of using appropriately the data across the board. So this is something that we will have to look at in terms of regulating. And this is, of course, relevant not only to innovation, but also to the essential medicines. Also to tell you that here at INFARMED, we are trying to build this capacity in terms of the future that will be very much supported also by the appropriate use of healthcare data. So I thank you very much for your attention, and we can continue with the session. I think it's my pleasure now to pass the floor to Dr. Susan Gound, who is the president of ICHOM. Suzanne, please have the floor.
Thank you so much. I'm just going to share some slides. Hopefully everybody can see those okay now. So thank you so much for welcoming. Great, thank you. Thank you so much for welcoming me back. I'm sorry not to be in Portugal. The weather here in England is pretty dreadful, but I know many of you are joining online. So as I was introduced, I'm Susan Gound, President and CEO at ICHOM. And this year I've been asked to answer some questions. So I was asked, could I talk about the challenges that research faces in the 21st century in healthcare, and how science can be more instrumental for solving for healthcare problems, how healthcare research and innovation contribute to a data-driven healthcare system, and why this is important. So if we start with the challenges, and if we look at the bigger healthcare challenges that we face, as life expectancy increases, we continue to spend more and more in healthcare, and unfortunately we're achieving diminishing returns, and this problem is going to continue. And what's worse is when we look at that healthcare spend, there is a huge amount of wastage. So we believe 20 to 40% of healthcare spend is completely wasted, and half of this is due to practice variation. So when we talk about practice variation, I can give some examples here, and you can see this is a global problem, but there is a huge variation in the outcomes that patients are receiving when they're treated across the various conditions. And we want to ensure that the outcomes that matter most to patients, that there is a greater consistency. So the challenge that we face is coming to a real value crisis, and we put patients in the center of everything that we do. Are patients really receiving value? Are they receiving the best possible outcomes? And, you know, add this challenge to the problem that we have with the amount of spend, the wastage in spend, and the variation in outcomes. How do we then start to address this? And we think about, you know, the question specifically about how research is challenged here. So we need research to help us address these problems, and yet there are some significant issues here. So if we look at the issues around purpose, as you can imagine, especially in a global pandemic, there's a huge amount of burnout and attrition within medics and clinical professionals delivering care. And as a result, of course, there's resistance to change. It's very difficult to embark on change programs when you have the problems that you're facing in the delivery of care. And there's a huge amount of fragmentation in the organization of structures within organizations, within governments, within care delivery, and there are huge misalignment across incentives. So when we talk specifically about research, there's also a growing disconnect between research and clinical practice, and poor access to standardized data from clinical practice, as well as an imbalance in research and development expenditure. So when we really need research to help us address these healthcare problems, the challenge we face is that we're making it more difficult for researchers to help us address these problems. So there are some tools that are really needed now to help us address this, some of these problems. And we're looking at this from three perspectives. One is around patient needs, one is around the judgment and experience of clinicians, and one is around scientific evidence and guidance. So some of the challenges we face here, for example, are, you know, we look at patients saying that they want to be involved in their clinical decision making, and yet the volume of those patients that feel that they have the ability to influence decision making is far smaller than those who wish to be involved in that, or the lag between evidence being produced and then being adopted. So these are the sorts of challenges that we face, and when we start to look at how we can use science to improve this problem, we'll talk more about standardization. So we said that there's a huge wastage in healthcare, and we know that value-based healthcare has the potential to unlock more than $2 trillion of spend that could be better used. And so what we want to be able to do is, by using standard outcome measures, we want to make benchmarking possible, and that benchmarking will allow us to enable for continuous learning. And so we're trying to ensure standardization and then how we learn from that standardization. So I'll just talk a little bit about some of the work that we've done. So we've created 40 sets of outcome measures, patient outcome measures, which are covering more than 50% of the global disease burden. And those are being used across the world. And we want to ensure that from these outcomes, we're all measuring the same thing. So the sets have been widely publicized. They're published in peer-reviewed journals, and we're very fortunate that so many organizations have started to adopt these globally. But we need to make this easier. And so I want to talk a little bit about digitization. So this slide talks a little bit about some of the opportunities for digitization and where it's being used. so at a basic method, just a collection of data, and then being able to adopt, for example, artificial intelligence solutions that can really provide for personalized medicine. So I want to talk a little bit about how we've gone on to digitize ICHOM standard sets. So what we've been doing is first of all, we've harmonized all the sets so that there's no discrepancy across terms within the sets. And so we've harmonized the terms, and then we've mapped them all to SNOMED and LOINC. And we've built an application which allows people to download the sets as XML or JSON files. And we hope that this will allow a greater level of ease when it comes to implementation. And where we're going next is to ensure that they're interoperable. So we're working with HL7. We've created some relationships with groups to create a working group so that we can, to start with, we're going to put the breast cancer standard sets on fire. And we hope that we'll see a greater level of adoption as we're able to provide this. And then from there, I talked about the benchmarking. We've developed a web-based platform that will provide end-to-end analysis of benchmark data. And we hope that in time, as that data set grows, we will be able to support global clinical trials with randomized observational studies. That's a little way out, but that's where we hope to go. So I'll just give you a little bit more detail about the benchmarking platform, and then I look forward to handing over to the next speaker and then answering some questions at the end of the session. So the goal is to be able to support organizations, healthcare providers, to collect data, extract that data, and then we will be able to risk adjust that data. So we are ensuring we're comparing like with like. The data always continues to belong to patients and hospitals. We're never owning data. We're just helping with the analysis of that data. And then, as I said, with the analysis, we hope that we'll be able to provide insights that organizations can use that will help them with understanding what's right, what's wrong, variations in practice, and can then make changes off the back of those learnings. So with that, I'm going to stop sharing and hand over to our next speaker.
Okay, thank you very much, Suzanne. I'm gonna try to share my screen now. Just let me know if you see it.
Perfectly fine, thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. So thanks a lot for this invitation. It's great to be with you and to share some information about open science from the European Commission perspective. I would like to start with what we are doing and why. So open science is just a set of practices that tries to improve the way science and research is done. And for example, we advocate for having fair digital outputs. That's findable, accessible, interoperable, and reusable digital outputs. Outputs that are shared early on, before even publication sometimes, and with open methods. And we try to do that with developing enablers, such as rewarding and incentivizing open science practices, and developing infrastructure such as the European Open Science Cloud. So in Horizon Europe, which is our new program after Horizon 2020, the new funding program for the next 7 years, we go here from open access to open science, which is a more holistic approach, not only focusing on open access to publications like it was the very start or very first policy, but also involving several other practices. And these practices are going to be evaluated when grantees submit a proposal, when interested parties submit a proposal. And we advocate here for responsible data management. We want all projects to submit data management plans as deliverables of the project. And this is a big difference from Horizon 2020, where only beneficiaries that were planning to open up their data were submitting data management plans. Now this is across the board, the same for all projects. And we see this as a very big push to achieve responsible data management. I will not go into details for other elements, but a lot of this has to do with mainstreaming open science. And I mentioned before infrastructures. So what is the European Open Science Cloud? This is an effort to accelerate open science, achieve fair data management, and mainstream the use of digital methods and services. So we want this to be an open, trusted, and federated infrastructure. And this is really an evolving ecosystem with many players involved. And what we hope to achieve is what we like to call sometimes the web of fair data and services. And we do this with forming a European partnership. So we have on one hand the European Commission that signed an MOU last summer with the EOSC Association, where different research organizations or ministries from various member states are represented. And here we're talking about a very significant investment. This is a close collaboration between DG RTD and DG Connect. And we are looking at about 1 billion euro in funding up to 2027. So as a priority pilot for the European Open Science Cloud, and as a response to the COVID-19 pandemic, we developed the COVID-19 data platform together with partners such as the Elixir Life Science Infrastructure, the EMBL-EBI, and several member states and other partners. So this was really to show what the EOSC vision is. So to see how fair data and open data, of course, we always talk about as open as possible, as closed as necessary, but even for the closed data to be fair. And we managed to collect up to now over 6 million records of different data types, going from biomolecular and genomic sequences all the way to connecting with human sensitive data and having a system that really tries to bridge this gap between fully open data or access control data. This fits in our whole response to the COVID-19 pandemic that started with the ERA versus Corona action plan in January. And what you see there, the VIO project, the Versatile Emerging Infectious Disease Observatory, this was already a continuation of the previous project that was launched before the pandemic, but due to the focus, it contributed a lot to the European COVID-19 data platform. At the same time, we had the Public Health Information Research Infrastructure, FIRI, and the HERA incubator, which was funding, emergency funding, that will lead to the establishment of the HERA, which is a new authority of health emergency preparedness response authority that is DG Santé, is the lead for this, and this is expected to start being established in early 2022. So what you see there, the logo by COVID, this is a project actually meaning beyond COVID. So this is based on the European COVID-19 data platform, but extending it, funding it with an extra 12 million euros, bringing together 53 organizations from 19 different countries to work together, going all the way from research organizations to partners, including hospitals, to try to really bring fair data and open data together to develop tools and services for pandemic or outbreak preparedness, and to contribute to the European health data space and the European Open Science Cloud. And I will just end this short presentation with this slide that tries to really show what the platform and the portal for COVID-19 try to do, and is still pursuing, of course, but hoping to extend for diseases beyond COVID-19. So really trying to have the spectrum of data that can be open, fully open and reusable, to having access control data when we have to. So when there's sensitive data, human data. And this has different systems. For example, for sensitive data, there is the European Genome Phenome Archive, which is now being made into a federation. So having different nodes of the EGA in different countries where data do not have to live in their national borders, but can still be shared. So metadata can be exposed, and then researchers, for example, can access this data under secure conditions. So this is what I would like to cover, and I thank you very much and happy to answer any questions. We'll stop sharing.
I think we can now listen to Peter Arlett, Dr. Peter Arlett. Peter.
Hi, good morning. Sorry not to be with you in person in Porto, and greetings from Amsterdam. So I will just share my slides for you, if you can confirm that, that you can see them.
Yes, we can see them. Thank you.
Great. So I'm going to spend about 10 minutes talking about medicines regulation. So it was really interesting to hear about the health data benchmarking about health services. Really interesting to hear about the enormous investment in digital and healthcare data from DG Research. We now focus down on medicines regulation, which is a particularly important part of the use of healthcare data. And this is a very complicated title, but I think the key thing I want you to focus on is transformation of medicines regulation and evidence generation. And that's digital transformation, data-driven transformation. If I give you a vision, this vision comes from a task force we set up a few years ago, we being medicines regulators in Europe, called the Big Data Task Force. And we stated that by delivering the vision of a regulatory system able to integrate big data into its assessment and decision-making, we can support the development of innovative medicines, deliver life-saving treatments to patients more quickly, and optimize the safe and effective use of medicines through measurement of a product's performance on the market. Now that's a big, bold vision, but it is what we are working to achieve. Now, I suspect many others during this forum will mention all the different policy initiatives going on in Europe. And in this slide, I mix some that are general and critically important health policy initiatives coming from Brussels, and some that are specific to medicines regulations. So first of all, as you well have heard, we have the EU health data space, which is, I'm sure, being present in many of the presentations. And what we're really saying is we're recognizing that the time is now, that both at a scientific, operational, and at a policy and lawmaking level, everybody is realizing that there is huge potential from healthcare data to improve the lives of citizens in Europe. We are focusing within the European regulatory network on the top 10 recommendations on data that came out of that task force I mentioned. And we have a strategy to 2025 in the medicines regulatory network, which has data and analytics as a central pillar. I would put it to you that the time for data is now. Now, this slide gives you a kind of looking back timescale of our work on big data, and particularly focus on the green box on the right-hand corner, which was a new work plan, a work plan for transformation that we published in August. That work plan is represented graphically in this slide, and obviously you won't be able to read it while I'm presenting. But what you will see is that we've got different work streams that are focused on different aspects. And if I click to the next slide, again, we won't go through each and everything on this slide, but I just want to give you a feel for the huge amount of work going on within the regulatory network, regulation of medicines this is, to see that we can transform over the coming years to data-driven regulation. Firstly, we are setting up a network, a federated network of healthcare data that can be leveraged for medicines regulatory decision-making. We're working on a data quality framework. We are agreeing metadata that describe real-world data that can then be used to catalog European real-world data in order to enable findability or discoverability. We're training up people in the European regulatory network in data science, as well as pharmacoepidemiology and biostatistics. We're putting processes in place, the core business processes of medicines regulation, to ensure that real-world evidence can be requested from our core work, and then the results of studies can be fed into it. We're building capability to analyze data, including raw data from clinical trials and various projects on artificial intelligence. We're developing guidelines. We're strengthening governance for data, including helping people to navigate data protection. So seeing data protection legislation as an enabler for research rather than, as some in the past have seen it, as a block. We're collaborating internationally, and we're engaging with stakeholders. Now, I was asked by the organisers to touch on stakeholders, and this is a rather simple slide in a way. And I guess the stakeholders that we have as medicines regulators are rather similar to the people that are registered and taking part in this forum today. But at the core, we are the European Medicines Regulatory Network, made up of the European Medicines Agency, the national competent authorities, and the European Commission. We see an absolutely key partner in this work to be the TEDAS joint action, and I suspect other speakers will be mentioning and talking about TEDAS. So this is a joint action, so that's an inter-member state project, essentially, funded by the European Commission, and TEDAS stands for Towards a European Health Data Space. And this is the forum, the collaboration, the project that is building some of the policy and technical documents that will support legislation if and when that's adopted. We believe as medicines regulators that we need to be collaborating with downstream decision makers, by which I mean health technology assessment bodies and payers. Industry, pharmaceutical industry, is clearly a critical stakeholder in our work, including our digital work. Patients and healthcare professionals, and data holders and partners, obviously absolutely critical. And actually, in terms of ordering, probably I should have ended this slide with patients, because I know we often say it, but we are really trying to put patients center stage in terms of the purpose of what we do, but also how we do it, having patients at the table when we're making decisions on how we deliver this data transformation. So I make it to you as a pledge, really, that we will continue and even intensify our consultation and dialogue with stakeholders in data and digitalization going forward, and that we will, in our implementation of this transformation, we will be transparent in terms of our processes, operations, and evidentiary value. Now, this is a complex slide, and I think I will focus you just on the bottom part of the slide. It's particularly looking at real-world data, real-world evidence, which is a central part of big data. And those of you who are familiar with medicines regulation will know that we have a role as medicines regulation in the development of medicine. So what I've put on the slide as pre-authorization, in the evaluation and therefore authorization of medicines. So that's the block at the bottom that says evaluation. And then once a product's on the market, the post-authorization phase. And perhaps you'll be less familiar that we have different committees at European level that focus on those different stages and those different business processes. So orphan designation, for example, so deciding that a disease is rare enough to be granted incentives to have medicines developed to treat that disease. We have a specific committee called the COMP that does that. And we believe there are absolutely compelling use cases for real-world evidence in terms of the work of the Committee on Orphan Medicines, particularly looking at the prevalence of disease, which is the critical criteria for giving orphan designation. During scientific advice, this is where we advise companies on the development of products. Real-world evidence can help us understand where is unmet medical need, what is the normal disease epidemiology, what's the normal treatment pathway for a particular disease, to provide context for and feasibility of doing clinical trials or even doing observational studies to help understand the safety and effectiveness of a medicine. For pediatric medicines, unmet medical need, we can use real-world evidence to look at how diseases affect children. At the time of authorization, we can contextualize clinical trials. We can understand whether the clinical trials represent the patients that are out there in the community, but we can also use evidence from observational studies done on real-world sources, data sources, to help the decision-making. And clearly, real-world evidence comes into its own when products are on the market, looking at the safety and also the effectiveness and the use of those products in everyday medical practice. Just a quick mention of COVID. I'm sure other speakers have spoken a lot about COVID. Real-world evidence in medicines regulation has really come to its own and shown its benefits during the COVID pandemic. We have seen use cases for monitoring the use of medicines to predict demand and shortages, understanding natural history that will then support the development of vaccines and therapeutics, providing evidence to repurpose existing medicines, and critically to monitor the safety and effectiveness of vaccines and therapeutics on the market. Just to mention that we believe that the Darwin network, this is the network of real-world evidence being set up, starting really now, will be a critical enabler for future crisis and pandemic preparedness and response. And the Darwin network focuses on real-world evidence. Now, this slide is busy in terms of text, but it sets out a vision. And I just want to walk you through in about 60 seconds what we think the world will look like in 4 or 5 years' time from a regulatory perspective. So we believe that Darwin EU, this network, federated network of real-world evidence, will be established to better support decision-making throughout the life cycle. We believe more generally that real-world evidence will be established and understood source of evidence, so we will understand its place in decision-making. We believe that data will be discoverable and of known quality and representativeness, that the European Medicines Regulatory Network will have the knowledge and experience in data science, methods and analytics to advise companies when developing their products and to expertly assess application dossiers. We will have in place what we've called a learnings initiative to enable continuous learning from regulatory applications, as well as the different projects and initiatives that stakeholders are leading and sharing of information to help us learn. We will have a suite of EU and international guidelines and standards available to support data and real-world evidence. We will have full compliance with data protection and high levels of ethics and data sharing. And all of this will be underpinned by collaboration with all stakeholders. My last slide. Regulation will become more data-driven. This means that regulatory decisions will include and be complemented by the analysis of raw data from clinical trials and based on real-world data. Better evidence supports better decisions making on medicines for patients. So we will be delivering medicines earlier, and we will be optimizing the safe and effective use of those medicines on the market. Delivery will be through collaboration, and there'll be a role for all stakeholders, and we will be patient-focused in everything we do. There's a quote at the bottom, which I quite like, and it's really our goal, that by 2025, the use of real-world evidence will have been enabled and the value will have been established across the spectrum of regulatory use cases. Rui, thank you very much indeed.
Thank you, Peter. Thank you very much for the your presentation. I think is back to Paulo. Paulo, is that
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Roivio, and thank you, dear panelists. It was an incredible share of information. I realize here that Licinio Custramano, which was presenting yesterday from DigiSante, asking about how relevant is the European initiative for the European health data space, and now listening to the presentation from this panel and specifically Dr. Peter Arlett, it's a good news that I will bring to him. And definitely what I realize from what we have seen so far is that the question is, are we on track? Are we on track in terms of research of innovations for the next generation healthcare systems that they were expected and needed? I see that the pieces of the puzzles are fitting, and I, myself as a European citizen, I feel proud on what we are doing here in the European Union. Suddenly we get our act together and we have now our population vaccinated. We have this initiative. We see leadership happening, even though it's completely different to govern a space like European Union than China, for instance, or the US. And I'm proud of that. And thank you so much for your contributions here, Dr. Huiv, Dr. Peter Arlett, and Kostas, and initiatives that you're doing in the European Commission on behalf of us all citizens. Question is, are we really on track? And perhaps, Suzanne, even you can have a global perspective here. Says, how do you think European Union could be setting an example for the rest of the world in the research and innovation ecosystem that it's really being created here?
Yeah. Yes, I think so. We're keen to see progress globally, and if Europe can lead the way, then that's wonderful because the rest of the world can follow. But we hope that progress will be made globally and we can all learn from one another. I think when we listen to these presentations and everything is so exciting and there are so many good initiatives, I think each and every one sounds fantastic. What we have to ensure is that we all work together to ensure that there's not duplication of effort, and that each piece of work can complement one another. And I think if we get better at doing that, I think we should see speed increase. I'm a desperately impatient person, and I think if you look at the challenges we face, we need all patients to have the best possible outcomes now, not tomorrow. And so we need to move quickly. And so it can't come soon enough. I think that's the challenge that we face. So we are making good progress, but we need to move quickly. And I think doing that collaboratively will really help us.
Thank you so much. Dr. Roivio had a lived experience in the presidency of the European Union last semester. Dr. Roivio, from your impressions, what was the major learning that was extracted from this presidency? What was the major takeaways?
Thank you, Paul. Perhaps allow me to say that I think that in this panel, and if we go from the beginning till the end, we have shown how much is being done, and I completely agree with what Suzanne has just said, because I tried to give some more concrete aspect. But then when you listen to Suzanne talking on the standardization importance, then Kostas on what is being prepared in terms of infrastructure, I would say, and then Peter being very positive on what we are doing regarding to the framework of the regulation. And probably I could add my expectations on the review of the pharmaceutical legislation that will also add a layer in terms of bringing this, let's say, into more reality. So to give the grounds for this happening. But of course, Paulo, I think our presidency has also shown clearly the importance of the collaboration, and we have had a strong. I think probably COVID has highlighted or has strengthened this the need for this collaboration, and this has clearly been seen during the presidency. I would say that two levels: one at, let's say, more the regulators level that Peter and myself are very much involved, but also at the level of the more political discussions in the council, where we saw also the sense of taking things to advance, and this I think is clearly being shown when we see what is being put in place in relation to the health area in Europe, where we do not have, let's say, so much support from the treaties, but we are now conscious of the importance of having responses together, and so we need to be more, let's say, more flexible and imaginative in terms of advancing, not being bound or being limited by only what is in the rules. So these are clearly key messages I take from the presidency, and I see that this will be materialized and in the next steps. I'm quite optimistic in seeing such a devotion in terms of what we are doing in Europe right now, and of course concretely in this field. And I would like to underline the importance of making sure that we will be able to use this system, because at the end of the day, as has been said by I think all the speakers, we have to make to show the benefit for the citizen, for the patient in this case. So and I think I'm confident that we will succeed.
Fantastic. It's good to end on an optimist note. So finally, a last question for the two panelists, and if this starting perhaps with Kostas, then Peter, giving an advantage to Peter as he can prepare the answer. But if you would like, if you have a magic wand in your hand, like something that you could immediately hack and materialize, Kostas, what will be your wish? And then for Peter, and then we conclude.
Right. I mean, that's a tricky question, right? But I think that among several things that I could pick, I would like to highlight also what some other speakers said about having standards and having interoperable data, and being able to share and reuse those data in a safe and secure manner. So if we have trust, if we can build trust, which at the end of the day, the whole idea about the European health data space and all the infrastructure projects are, how do you build trust and how do you enable the patients to have control over their data? And Suzanne mentioned this as well in her presentation. So this is a thing where we are aiming at, and to be able to use this data in an interoperable way to achieve better outcomes for the patients, and better healthcare and better preparedness for sort of eventual emergencies that may come in the future. And just very quickly, I wanted to mention before that together with the Portuguese presidency, so with your Science Minister Manuel Leitor and our Commissioner Maria Gabriel, last summer we organized an event in Lisbon under the Portuguese presidency exactly to discuss interoperability and how important it is. So having as a start the COVID-19 pandemic, but perhaps using this as an accelerator to be able to apply this to healthcare, but also other areas of data. And in fact, we have the declaration of the Portuguese presidency on interoperability. I believe it was called Riding the Next Wave of Data. So that's what I wanted to mention. Thanks.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Kostas. Consensus building. Last but not least, Dr. Peter Arlett, what will be your wish?
So it's a lovely question, actually, and maybe building on Kostas's intervention. I think for most of it, we can do it. We can do it ourselves, so we don't need a magic wand. But I think the thing that is most challenging is the very first step, and that is collecting high quality healthcare data and ideally collecting it in standardized formats using standardized terminologies. That's really, really heavy lifting, given that we work in a, well, with fragmented European healthcare systems, different languages, etc. So my magic wand would be in the data collection bit of it. I think everything else we can do ourselves, but just maybe to re-emphasize that the time is now. The time is now for healthcare data. Let's leverage the momentum of COVID-19. Let's have clear goals, because you say, are we on track? But on track to deliver better medicines for patients, better healthcare delivery for patients, and therefore better health of citizens within Europe. And the answer is, yes, we can make things better. I suppose the real question is, how much better? And can we realize the full potential and how quickly? So yes, we can, I think, is the answer.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. So the floor back to chair of this table, Dr. Rive, to officially close, as we are quite on 1 minute to close on time. Thank you so much, dear panelists.
Thank you, Paul. Thank you very much for the discussion. Thank you to all of the colleagues that have participated in the session. I think it was a very enriching session. As I mentioned, I think we have shown the different let's say elements that are at stake, and I think if we will continue working together, and as Peter has just said, we can do it. I'm sure that we are addressing all the different elements, and I would like to conclude with a word of clear optimism and the confidence that we will be successful, because we are also showing that we are building on the experience that we have lived with the pandemic. So we are not missing that opportunity, and I think this is very important. We are using the opportunity to improve and to advance, and so this is what I see, and this is what I wish. Thank you very much, and I wish a good continuation of the meeting.
Thank you so much. Round of applause from the auditorium here. Is a really hybrid event. Thank you so much. So without further ado, I would like to welcome already the next speakers and invite to the table the session leaders that are here in the auditorium for the peer conference. If you be so kind to join me here in the table here, and so we can do a little bit of an introductions in the session. We have also to assess how many participants we have in Zoom, because we might have to combine, instead of 4 breakouts, we only be activating 2 breakouts room, because we have to combine the teams. And my proposal will be to get AI and wearables in the same room, and hospitals for repairs and clinical decision support systems in another room. So this way we can have at least 2 groups to discuss their in-depth and taking advantage of the participation that we have remotely. This is the time for us to be here and going deeper in the conversations. Maybe anyone else here? João Bocas? And João? Eyes outside, yes. Maybe if you can page João and also Carlos Jaime to come to the table. And Gregor, if you're online. Oh, Gregor. Thank you so much being here. I know that Gregor is taking a holiday in Italy, enjoying a little bit of some leisure time on his busy schedule. Gregor just hosted recently a magnificent event, Health Days Slovenia. It's an amazing week. Such a tremendous momentum and good content shared there. I really am an admirer of Gregor leadership in terms of this community of digital health and digital transformation events.
Hi, everybody.
Also, remotely, we should have with the Sylvia Pai and the Dr. Stevan Bujciak. Thank you so much, Stevan, for taking time from your schedule and unfortunately both of you cannot be here with us in Porto, otherwise you'll be benefiting and enjoying the dinner. Yesterday it was lovely dinner. And Sylvia Piai perhaps should be also on the call, and then we have here the auditorium. Yes. And Ushka, maybe you can help me here in the starting of this peer conference, so we can have also you here and Sylvia Fish joining. So Carlos Schein. Okay. And João Bocas, we're waiting for João. And perhaps, Regi, if you'd be so kind to restart the stream with the title of the second of the hybrid peer conference in the title, and we close this transmission for the